In class, we learned about the ancient engineering casting technique of investment casting. Ancient engineers used beeswax and clay for their molds. We used the modern lost foam method because of practical, financial, and safety reasons. Aluminum was used instead of copper due to it being readily available and was provided to us without cost.
This is the rough cut of the styrofoam block before being refined down by the hot wire cutter into the shape of our axe head. Here's the hot wire cutter in the process of refining our rough cut. This is the final cut of styrofoam before attaching the runner. This is exactly what our product will look like once it's cast into aluminum.
We load the scrap aluminum ingot into the crucible and place it into the induction furnace.
On the left-hand side of the screen, the large blue container is called the flask. The flask sits on top of a vibration table which is used to compact the sand. Here you can see the flask beginning to be filled with sand, which will eventually surround the mold. The sand must be sifted before being placed into the flask to ensure that no impurities are present.
We attach the runner to our final mold. This is where the metal will flow down to form our axe head. Sand was poured into the flask around the mold. We then formed the sand to make a funnel to guide the molten metal to the runner.
This red box is the key to the induction furnace. Inside, wires follow a circular pattern. An induction current is sent through the wires, establishing a magnetic field. This magnetic field interacts with the atoms in the metal, creating the high heat required to melt the metal. Above the red box is a mirror. This mirror is used to view the crucible from a distance for safety reasons.
Before pouring the metal, certain safety gear must be worn. In addition to closed-toed shoes and safety goggles, heat-resistant gloves and a fire-resistant jacket are needed.
Here you can see the crucible being secured using a large set of pliers. The crucible is then very carefully lifted and carried over to the flask. The molten metal is then slowly poured into the flask, where it flows down into the foam mold. The pouring is complete once the molten metal begins to visibly fill the funnel. The excess metal is then taken over to the ingot molds, where it is poured for later use.
The aluminum took about 10 minutes to cool to a temperature where we could remove it from the sand. We used a crane to lift the flask and pour out the sand. This is done both for safety and because the flask is really heavy.
To speed up cooling, we quench the casting in a bucket of water. Here is the resulting casting once it has cooled. To finalize the axe, the runner was cut off using a hacksaw.
And here are a few pictures of the final product.